I remember I looked outside my window and I saw she was butt naked, not wearing anything outside. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba and welcome back to another really embarrassing, but I gotta say crazy story. I remember I was in my grade 9 year, and around grade 9, I gotta say, I was just getting into basically meeting women and becoming a player slowly. Obviously, around grade 10 was when my real slang days were about, but I remember in my grade 9 year, there was one girl I ended up meeting in my theater class. And in my theater class, I remember when I met this girl, I'm not gonna lie to you, she ended up becoming my partner for a lot of different projects and school plays that we were doing. For example, if I was playing a character that relied on me being a prince, chances were that she would be the princess or the frog that I end up kissing. And one thing I started to realize was that my theater teacher would always pair me up with this girl because apparently he really liked how we had so much chemistry with each other. I had really no idea how we had more chemistry, and the only reason I was taking theater class was because back when I was in grade 9, I had a really bad stutter. But I remember basically me and this girl, we would always pair up and stuff, and I remember I got to a point where one day she ended up looking at me and said, "Hey Bubba, I was just wondering, like, would it be cool if I maybe got your Snapchat?" I remember I looked at her and I didn't want to say no because she was my partner in a lot of different projects, but at the same time, I had really no interest in this girl. But at the same time, I said sure, and I remember I ended up giving her my Snapchat account. I remember when I added her, right away, she ended up changing my username from Bubba to calling it Daddy under her own contacts on Snapchat. And at that point, I got super weirded out because what kind of girl adds someone and then called them Daddy right away? I found it really weird, but honestly, I tried to ignore it. Maybe I'm not the only guy she would do this with. But I started to realize this was a major mistake of me giving her my Snapchat because I remember she kept snapping me and sending me messages back to back non-stop. It got to the point where she actually ended up going to follow my Instagram and basically started sending me reels and memes, and honestly, I started to feel really uncomfortable because this girl just kept messaging me over and over. Even if I didn't reply, she would just try to find any other social media account to get my attention on. Even on Facebook, she ended up messaging me, which is super weird and super uncommon for me to use Facebook. The only time I would use that application is if I was messaging my grandma or the older people in my family tree. But for a girl to message me on there just to get my attention, I gotta say was really creepy. I remember lunchtime came around though, and basically I ended up going up to the cafeteria and I sat down with my friends on the second floor. We usually would sit in the corner where no one would really see us or, see us do goofy stuff that us boys usually do. And out of nowhere, when I went up there and sat down with them, one of the guys ended up looking at me saying, "Yo, Bubba, isn't that your theater partner back there just staring at us right now?" Wait, what? And right as I turned around, I saw she was standing in the corner of the stairwell leading to the second floor of the cafeteria, staring at us with her eyes wide open as if she was going to kill one of us. It was super weird, and I gotta say, she was really just down bad for me at this point. And I remember all my friends kept making fun of me over and over because this girl was just so down bad for me. Now, obviously, a little teasing and, her being very creepy was one thing. But what this girl ends up doing next, I gotta say, really took things overboard. Because I remember after school came around, and since I was in grade 9, I didn't get my car yet, so I would end up having to walk home. And me, as I was walking home from school that day, out of nowhere, I end up seeing someone running up behind me and grabbing my shoulder. And then I heard this girl say, "Oh, Bubba, can I walk with you? I live down this way." Yeah, sure, is what I told her. And me and her, we started walking down the street together. As me and her were walking down the street, I remember she kept looking at me and she kept trying to make this romantic thing happen where she would hold my hand all of a sudden. But every time she would reach for my hand, I kept pulling back and basically got to the point where I ended up putting my hands in my pockets. Obviously, once again, like I was saying earlier, I had no interest in this girl whatsoever. And I was trying to make that very clear to her, but clearly she wasn't getting the message. And I remember as me and her were walking home, she kept trying to start up the conversation of basically how she really wants to do the devil's tango and how she was in the mood. Now, usually, I'm not gonna lie to you, if this was my grade 11 or 10 year, I would have probably done it with her. I'm not gonna lie. But since I was in grade 9 and I wasn't interested in this girl, obviously I didn't go for it right away. But I remember as me and her were walking down the street, I kept thinking about when was this girl gonna turn off and actually go back to her place, because she was walking pretty close to my house at this point. And I remember right as we get to the front of my doorstep, I remember I looked at her and said, "Wait, so are you living near here? Yeah, no, I just like live down the street. Oh, okay, cool. I guess I'll see you at school tomorrow. Oh yeah, 100% you will, daddy. What is what I told her? And then she ended up basically getting up and walking away, heading back home. I'm not gonna lie, I guess she wanted to invite in, but obviously I didn't invite her inside because once again, I was not interested in this girl whatsoever. But at the same time, when I got inside my house and sat down on my bed, I started to realize that now this girl knows where I live. And boy, will I say that was the biggest mistake ever, because I remember when I ended up going on my phone and I saw the 100 Snapchats from her, I ended up clicking on her Snapchat profile and I saw that she lived all the way across town, the opposite direction from me. Like it was another 30-minute walk for this girl just to get home. And that's when my mind was blown, because I'm like, wait, did she just walk all this way just to walk with me for no reason? I'm not gonna lie, obviously at this point I was really weirded out and I felt really uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable about what she ended up doing next. Because I remember the next day at school when I got there, I ended up going to my theater class, and obviously once again we had another theater exercise where basically we had to practice stage fighting. Now if you guys don't know, stage fighting is when you basically pretend to fight. And obviously our teacher started to pair us all up and he ended up pairing me with this girl again. Obviously when me and her we started like practicing stage fighting, it got to the point where she actually ended up grabbing me for real and she ended up throwing me to the ground and sitting on my eggplant. And she looked at me directly into my eyes as she was holding me down saying, "Oh, I really like this, daddy." Wait, what is wrong with you? Is what I said afterwards. And I ended up pushing her off, and right away everyone in the classroom just started staring at us, which I mean they have every right to, because she was being super weird. At that point I remember my teacher decided not to pair us up after that weird stuff happening, because well, I guess he got the message that I was not interested in this girl whatsoever. But what ends up happening next, I gotta say, was way too overboard, to the point where I think it was illegal. Because I remember after school came around and became super late at night, I want to say at like 8:30. And around 8:30 is when my mom would usually want me to get off playing video games and basically head to bed for the next school day tomorrow. So me, I remember I ended up basically getting off my Xbox. I went to lay down and go on my phone, because I usually go on my phone before I go to bed. Comment down below if you guys do the same thing. And as I was on my phone, I remember I ended up getting a message from this girl that was from my theater class. She ends up sending me a message saying, "Baba, look out your window real quick." And at that moment, I got super confused, because I'm like, wait, my window? And right as I walk up to my window and I look right outside of it, I end up seeing this girl wearing absolutely nothing. Like her cherries and her peach were out, and she was just in my front lawn naked. I remember I started panicking and I'm like, what in the world are you doing? Like, stop, get off my lawn. And at that point she said, "Oh, like invite me in, open your window." No, bro, get out of here, is what I said. But knowing that I was panicking, obviously I didn't want to wake my parents up, and she started to make some noise on the front lawn. So what I decided to do was I basically ended up opening up my window, inviting her in, as she was wearing nothing, by the way. So I ended up putting my blanket on her that I usually sleep with, and she looks at me saying, "Wow, it's so nice in your room. This is so romantic." Girl, how down bad are you, bro? Like, are you serious right now? I remember I got so annoyed and so grossed out with this girl, but honestly, I won't lie to you, I did kind of get bricked since she was not wearing anything. And well, one thing led to another. I did the devil's tango with this girl. Obviously the next day, I remember I ended up basically waking up and I saw she wasn't there at my house anymore. And when I got to school the next day, she already started simping for another dude. I know, literally insane. But hey, what can I say? Some girls are just down bad until they get it. But if you guys don't want this to happen to you, then just follow for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys. For some reason, this girl, after finding out my deepest, darkest secret, would not leave my house, to the point where she kept coming up to me saying, "Baba, please, just, I care about you more than her. I want to be with you." Like, what? Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another embarrassing but crazy story. Now, this story all takes place back when I was in grade 8. And in grade 8, I was actually a really basic middle schooler. Not gonna lie, I wasn't anything special, and all I did was mostly play video games. But I remember basically there was one time where, as I was basically walking home from school, I ended up seeing my mom drive right past me. Now, this was usually normal, but at this time, for some reason, she actually ended up moving to the side of the road loud, parking her vehicle and saying, Bubba, come inside the car. I want to talk to you. You can't just tell me at the house? No, Bubba, come. Let me get you home. At this moment, I thought she was actually just showing love and affection like every mom usually does. But then when I sit inside the car, I realized there are two other people also in the vehicle. And one of them was my mom's friend that I already knew from her work. But the other girl, well, it was a major surprise. Because the girl that was sitting right behind me was actually, funny enough, in the same middle school as me. And she was also in the same grade. And I remember looking at her, totally curious of why she was sitting right behind me. But then afterwards, when we finally got to the house, we ended up sitting inside and going inside the living room. And that's when my mom explained, Bubba, this is my friend from work, and this is her new adopted daughter. Oh, adopted. Now, I think this was one of the first people I ever met that was adopted. And comment down below if you're adopted. But honestly, I never expected to actually meet someone that was adopted into a family. So I remember when I looked at her, I tried not to look at her any different and basically shook her hand, even though she looked nothing like her claimed mother. But I remember me and her, we ended up going upstairs to my room and we just started hanging out. We purely were friends and we didn't do anything at all. Obviously, I was still weirded out by her and I didn't like consider us close at all. But I tried being nice to her knowing that she was adopted, which I know it sounds really bad. Everyone should be nice to everyone anyways, but you can understand I was really young and this was my first time ever meeting a person that was adopted. Going on with the story, I remember after they ended up leaving, my mom ends up sitting beside me in the bedroom and she says to me, Bubba, she's a very sweet girl and I know she's lonely at school. Can you please just be friends with her a little bit more? What do you mean? Well, I don't know, like be around her more, be supportive of her. Yeah, sure, mom, I can do that, is what I said. Totally questioning why she's leaving me in charge of someone that's literally the same age as me. Like, I can't even take care of myself. But honestly, I ended up just accepting it and decided to be a good son and basically did my duties. I remember when I got to school and I saw her, I would first wave at her and just be friendly. But then I started to realize this girl is a lot more than she seems. Because I remember from me literally only just waving at her, she ends up walking up to me and hanging out with me. I didn't mind it at first, don't get me wrong. You know, she was adopted. I'm gonna be nice to her. But then she kept doing it over and over again to the point where she started hanging out with me a lot more, even if I did not want her around. And it was really hard to hang out with the guy friends that I knew because, well, they didn't want to be around her, but I wanted to be around my guy friends, so it kind of got really difficult. It got to the point where, honestly, not gonna lie, my guy friends started being really mean about it after I explained to them how she was adopted and stuff, so I ended up cutting them off little by little. And I started hanging out with this girl more and more. But that led to a lot more troubles because I remember it got to the point where she would basically come to my house every day, and me and her actually became really close. She started telling me a lot about herself and, you know, her journey through the adoption center and stuff. And me, well, I don't know, I kind of just ended up giving references from SpongeBob to Call of Duty and seeing if I could maybe make her laugh here and there. I don't know, I was just trying to be the nice guy that my mom wanted me to be. But I remember later on in the weeks when I went to school, I started to realize there was a rumor going around about me that apparently me and this girl were dating. I don't know why people were thinking this until I ended up going to one of my friends in school and asked him, yo, bro, did you hear the rumor that like I'm dating her?
Oh yeah, dude, like apparently you guys are like always hanging out together and like people saw her going into your house, so yeah, we thought you guys were dating.
And at that moment it all made sense. People thought I was dating her because, well, she really had no one else. She would only hang out with me and me alone. I started to feel annoyed at first, but then I started to realize that, you know, this is all coming from a really dark place. And I just thought, you know what, people are gonna think of me weird, let them be. This is actually one of the most uncommon times in my life where I would actually feel right about doing something even though many disagreed. But I remember me and her, we kept hanging out, and well, this is where the story gets tricky. Because as you guys may know, I'm a helpless romantic, and I had a middle school crush that I mentioned many times on this channel. And basically, I started to realize in my grade 8 year that my middle school crush actually somewhat had an interest in me. I had no idea why, and no one else did, to be fair, but a rumor went around that she was interested in me, but at the same time didn't go for me or say anything to me about it because I apparently had a girlfriend, and that was the adopted girl that my mom wanted me to hang out with in the first place. Now, I remember when I heard about this from my friend, I ended up freaking out, and I started to think, oh my goodness, wait, she likes me? Oh my goodness, no way, no way. And I remember as I was about to walk up to her and basically kind of shoot my shot, I remember this adopted girl that my mom wanted me to hang out with, which sounds really mean to keep calling her the adopted girl, but you guys understand. She ends up coming up to me right before I could walk up to my crush and says, hey, Bubba, what are you up to? I was about to, you know what? Never mind. What are you up to? And I ended up walking off with her instead. And I knew this wasn't a good idea because, well, it kept painting the image to my crush that I was seeing her instead of being actually interested in my crush. So obviously I was in a little bit of a pickle and I knew that I wanted to do something about it. And well, this is where the story gets a lot worse because I remember going to my house and basically my mom ended up setting up a sleepover for me and her friend's daughter that was adopted. And basically, to be honest, I didn't really mind because it was the weekend, it wasn't at school, and no one could, you know, see me hanging out with her at my place. And me and her, by the way, way, only had a good friendship relationship, okay? I had no feelings for her whatsoever. And you guys probably think that's really bizarre, knowing that I'm literally the guy that always does the devil's tango. But honestly, you gotta understand, in grade 8, I was a pretty simple person, okay? I was pretty innocent-ish, because that's the year I also lost it, but that's a story for another time. Going on, though, I remember when she was over at my place, me and her started playing Call of Duty and doing all the things I like. For some reason, she started really, you know, enjoying the things I did with my day-to-day life, and she would always try to join in with me. She even got an Xbox 360 just to play Call of Duty with me. And I remember on this specific day, though, on Friday, when she came over, she seemed like she had something to tell me. Now, I didn't know what she wanted to tell me, and I was super questioning what was going on with her, but she kept saying things like, oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, I'll tell you later. Don't worry about it. And I decided to basically move on from the subject. And I remember as me and her were playing Call of Duty that entire night, basically, I ended up going on my phone and I ended up seeing on my Instagram page a photo of my crush hanging out with one of the dudes at my school. Now, at this point, I started to panic because first my crush actually like had an interest in me, and now she doesn't because I'm hanging out with this girl. And that's when I thought of the plan to basically tell the girl that my mom wanted me to hang out with the truth, and that she can't hang around me so much because, well, I have an interest in my middle school crush. So I remember as time went on, I ended up basically pausing the game and I looked at her and I said, hey, so honestly, I wanted to tell you this for a long time, and like, don't get me wrong, I think you're great and everything. And that's when she stopped. She's like, Bubba, I know what you're gonna say, and honestly, I feel the same way. You do? Yeah, like, I totally understand, and trust me, like, I felt like this for a long time as well. Oh, I didn't know that. Why didn't you say anything? Well, like, I kind of wanted you to say it first, but honestly, like, now that we're finally being truthful with each other, Bubba, I want you to know that I really have a hardcore crush on you, and now that you have a crush on me, maybe we could actually like make it official. At that moment, I just froze in place. I'm like, bro, no way she just said she had a crush on me. And that's when I looked at her and I said, whoa, I'm not gonna lie to you, I actually have a crush on this girl. And that's when I said my middle school crush's name. At that moment, she started to freak out at me. She started yelling at me, screaming at me, and she started making a whole conundrum. It was actually really bad. And I remember it got to the point where I was praying my mom would run into my room, but for some reason she wasn't coming into my room at all. I started to panic and worry and super confused, so I ended up running downstairs as she was yelling at me, and I ended up looking for my mom. But my mom wasn't there, neither was her mom, and apparently they went out to like the bar or something. So I remember as I had this girl yelling at me, I kept telling her, yo, just leave me alone, okay? Like, I'm sorry I told you. No, Bubba, what does she have that I don't? Like, I don't get it. Like, seriously? Like, you like her? What? Because she's more popular than me? Is that it? Is it because she's popular? At this moment, I tried to look away and just basically tried to ignore her. I even put on my Xbox gaming headset and full on blasted it just so I could maybe drain out the noise of her yelling. But nothing would do it. She kept yelling and screaming and even got to the point where she refused to leave my house. No joke, I kept telling her, bro, just like get out of here. No, I'm not leaving your house, okay? You are mine and that's final. At that moment, I'm like, what do you mean? And that's when she started to try to actually take off my pants. Now, I know that sounds insane, and YouTube, don't demonetize this video. I'm just saying this because this was the most insane thing that's ever happened in my life. But going on, I remember my mom and her friend ended up finally coming home, and I thought this was finally the moment where this girl could leave me alone. But when my mom ended up hearing the screaming coming from my room, she runs upstairs and says, Bubba, what's happened? What's going on? Mom, tell her to leave me alone. I don't want to hang out with her anymore. Oh my goodness, Bubba's mom, you gotta understand, he is actually a jerk, okay? For some reason, like after showing all my love and affection, he won't love me back. At that moment, I remember seeing my friend's mom just looking down and just ashamed of herself, which to be fair, if I adopted someone that was psycho like she was, I would be too. And basically my mom ended up telling her friend to like leave me alone, but for some reason, the girl kept yelling, no, mom, you can't let me leave Bubba alone. I'm in love with him and he's mine. I'm staying right here. And it got to the point where, funny enough, we had to call the cops just to let her leave because my friend's mom didn't want to like drag her out of the house because, well, she was still going through the adoption papers, and anything that seems, you know, traumatic and triggering could ruin the adoption forms for her. So we ended up getting the cops involved and basically ended up doing it in a way where she wouldn't get in trouble as well. Honestly, it was a real crazy experience, and I'm gonna say this, bro. If you guys aren't adopted, then press the subscribe button for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.